This is Wayward Radio, your official source for news and information on the Wayward Realms. Greetings, fellow wanderers, and welcome to Wayward Radio, your ultimate gateway of untold stories, hidden lore, and the latest updates from OnceLost Games' epic creation, the Wayward Realms. I'm Joe, your host and fellow explorer, ready to guide you through a world of mystery, magic, and mayhem. The developers of the Wayward Realms have maintained that early access for those who contributed to the Kickstarter will be available at the end of 2025. Now, most dear listener, that's only 5 months away. It is time to get excited. What is this slice of the Archipelago we'll get to adventure during early access? Where does it take place? Where is that in relation to the other kingdoms? Who lives there? What sort of environments does it have? And what are the stories that people share together? These are the truths we're going to find tonight. And along on our journey with us is Ted Peterson, CEO of OnceLost Games and the game director of Wayward Realms.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome back, Ted.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great having you. Next is Victor, creative producer of the Wayward Realms, joining us again.
Very happy to be here. I'm sure the last one was such a huge success that we've been invited back to talk some more lore.
Absolutely. And not Mike Blake has returned to the podcast. Hello, designer and lead writer of the Wayward Realms. Welcome back, Blake.
Thank you. Glad to be back. I only showed up just to see if I could at least keep the record tied.
And new for us this week, I should say this month, is John, Master of Lore for the Wayward Realms. Welcome, John.
How's it going? Thank you.
Great having you. John, do me a favor. Would you mind giving us a quick overview of what your role is at OnceLost Games?
Yeah, well, you said Master of Lore, and that's not really my official title. We should say that, but I'll still take it.
Okay.
So I am senior editor for the Wayward Realms, and that involves a couple of things. The exact reason I joined the project was so that I could edit lore, specifically all the books and the other texts that we're going to be putting into the game, the stuff that you're going to be able to actually pick up and read. So we've had a bunch of different contributing writers over the course of the project, and nearly all of them have written books. And so I've been the principal editor on all of those up to now. In fact, since I mentioned it, if you go to waywardrealms.com, you can click the link up in the corner to go to the Library of Logos, where you'll find all of the stories that we've publicly released up to this point. I did write one of those, but I was also the editor on all of them. And then besides, other little writing tasks here and there, the other big thing that I've taken on is just building out and maintaining our internal wiki for the writing team. Because basically the second I joined the team a few years ago, it became pretty clear, partly because Ted told me that we had a bit of a documentation issue. Essentially, not everything was being written down, and a lot of stuff was just discussed in meetings or in message threads that are basically impossible to refer back to later. So what I've done is basically just try to
Organize.
One of my never-ending tasks is basically just sorting all this crap out and making sure that none of this really good work gets lost or goes to waste just because,
Crap is the wrong word.
just because nobody knows where the hell it is 2 years later. Most of it's not crap. Some of it's crap. But no. It's good stuff. It's good. It's all good stuff. I say crap lovingly. I sorted it out, get it organized. Part of that is just also discovering where the holes are, or if there are any inconsistencies, unintentional inconsistencies that are, problematic, things that need to be addressed, that sort of thing. So yeah, I edit lore, and I keep us sorted out as best as I can. That's basically what I do.
Yeah, John also kind of acts as our second in command for the writing team. He's Blake's right hand, who we've got tied up in the basement somewhere, just so Ted and I could be ahead of him for this time.
About time.
No, he deserves to be there. I will also say this about John is he's been really useful for the novel I'm writing because there's a whole lot of history of, the whole world we're developing. So it's much easier for me when I'm writing to say, hey, what happened in this year, and just treat it like a Wikipedia, and okay, well, this is something that I can reference in the book. So
yeah, it's our internal Wikipedia is basically what I've been spending probably like the past better part of the past year doing with most of my time.
Wow, that's incredible. Any plans in the future to release that in internal wiki for fans to look at?
Zero chance. No.
Absolutely not, because that's one of the big that's one of like my I guess you could say ethos with our wiki is that what is on the wiki is the actual truth. There's no ambiguity. There's no it is believed or it is rumored that this this sort of thing. No, none of that. That's another part of what I do is basically sanitize the whole thing and say this is actually true, this is not actually true, because we need to know what the actual truth is.
Yeah.
We don't want you knowing what the actual truth is, but we need to know. So I'm sure at some point, I think there is a community run wiki at this point. Maybe we'll be more active on there at some point, but there will absolutely never be a transfer of our wiki to the public. That would be...
because it spoils the game.
Yeah, that would be way too much.
Is the big thing. You're supposed to, first of all, live in a world which knows, at best 50% of the truth. And there's a whole lot of myth and everything around everything. So we want the player to explore and learn things. And if you all put these are the facts right out there, then what's the fun of exploring?
So here's a question I have kind of hearing all this. And maybe Ted or John, you can pick this up. There's that old saying, believe none of what you hear, half of what you read. In the Wayward Realms, in the Archipelago, is it true to say the same thing, or would the reverse be true? What's more truthful, what people say, or what we're liable to read off a book?
I'm inclined to saying the same.
I'd say it's pretty close to that. One of the things that Ted told the writing team a while back was that basically nothing that you pick up and read should ever be 100% true.
Really?
Some of it will be more accurate than others, of course. That's just because there are different types of writing from different perspectives. Some of it is
Sure.
close to being historical. Some of it is just straight fiction, and a lot of it is somewhere in between. But yeah, nothing. Unreliable narrator is definitely a thing, and that's something that we are incorporating throughout.
That's awesome. That's so good to hear, and it's really nice to hear. If the wiki's got the actual truth in it, I'm really glad to hear that you guys have decided this is internal, and we want to keep the fans guessing for their own enjoyment, so to speak, not to spoil stuff. So that's really cool. I'm glad that's the case.
Yeah, if they want access, they'll have to join the team.
Oh, and you don't want to do that.
Sign an NDA, and then go for it.
Gag orders.
Yep.
All right. Well, Ted, I want to shoot over to you for just a moment. First of all, John, thank you very much, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Ted, where will early access be set, and what can you tell us about that setting and the role that it plays in the archipelago? Can you give us a little bit of insight on that?
Sure. Obviously, we're the spiritual successor to Daggerfall, and back in the day, we had Privateer's Hell. Privateer's Old, thank you, which was the starter dungeon, like the place that you learned your basic skills by playing through. And, we wanted to do it bigger. So we created an island that is kind of your starter island. And that's called Eyjar. And from the beginning, it was a place that says, like, all right, there's danger, there's drama, there are things going on, but it is this kind of remote island off the coast of the archipelago that you play through and at a certain point get off and, go on and go to the main island. And that's where the drama, ranks up and the danger ranks up and all of that stuff. So, we wanted to have, enough of the exploration and intrigue, and like we wanted to give you the, starting player experience of playing the game. So it's kind of been designed around that. So it is a place called Eyjar, and it's, quite a ways offshore, and it's sort of in between She, which is our orcish kingdom, and Splendor, which is our human kingdom. So it's got a little bit of political intrigue going on, and we can get into that a little bit. But again, we wanted to keep the stakes, reasonable, both in terms of danger to the player and, overall, world stuff. So.
Eyjar, it's a very unique sort of a name. How did you come up with such a name, Ted?
I think it's honestly the Icelandic word for island.
Oh, well.
Or Norwegian or something Scandinavian.
It's Icelandic, and we've had some community members that are Icelandic complain to us.
What did they complain about?
I can't get over that name. It's just... just that it's named island, like it's island.
Well, that's fair. Well,
I mean, it's not like there's examples of that everywhere in the real world.
Yeah,
like
no, but it sounded right, and so we went with it. But it was definitely inspired by that.
We do pronounce it differently for whatever that's worth.
Oh, really? Or the Eyjar?
I think so, something like that.
Sounds like them. They would do that.
Got it. And for all of those out there listening in from our Scandinavian countries, I just flagrantly showed off my my inability to understand your language.
Also, don't call Iceland Scandinavian. Don't call Iceland Scandinavian. They're not going to like that.
And the hits just keep on coming. All right. So we begin on Eyjar. I mean, can you give us an idea on scope, Ted, on how big Eyjar is?
Well, I'll tell you the island, and it doesn't look like either one of these islands, but islands that I've been to that felt big enough to, really explore. One was an island off of Italy called Capri, and another one's an island in the Caribbean called St. Bart's. And I figured out what the dimensions are. It's not exactly, the dimensions of either one of those, but they seemed like they would be big enough to explore. And I think we just said like 10 by 5-ish. Is that right, Victor?
Miles, like 12 by 4 miles ish, like 20 by 10 kilometers, something like that.
Yeah,
miles. Yeah.
So it just seemed like the right thing. And then of course there were certain physical features that we wanted to have. We needed to have a big freshwater lake. So we put that on one side, and then we wanted to have a big volcano, which we put on the other side. And some people have said it looks like a guppy or something like that. Like it's a big, like wide-eyed, fishy shape. So,
Kind of like where I live on Long Island. It looks like a fish.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. A little fatter than Long Island, I think.
Yeah. We're about 20-minute drive north and west of, or north and south of each coast, north coast and south coast. About 20-minute drive.
All right,
It's pretty thin.
so not as far as the Hamptons.
No. That takes a long time to go from New York City all the way out to the Hamptons. Is probably a good 3-hour drive.
Right.
Yeah. So it's good to kind of get these dimensions and proportions because as we talk about lore. It's really good to understand that, so much of culture and history is shaped by the environment around us. So that's kind of why I want to sort of, get an idea of, how big is it and all that.
I will say that I think the size is the size of Skyrim.
Oh,
I could be wrong.
Bigger.
wow.
All right.
Yeah,
Bigger.
And that's just the starting island.
Yeah. Which is like if you did a big map, like a couple pixels off to the side.
Unbelievable. Wow. As I continue to be so impressed by the things that you gentlemen have to say on the game from month to month. That's incredible. And it's not to say that, Skyrim's size hasn't been beaten in the years that it's been out.
Well, I mean, every Elder Scrolls got smaller.
It did.
So
Yeah. So it's incredible to hear that. And here we are. The starter island is bam. Elder Scrolls.
yeah.
All right. I want to move over to you, John, on the kind of a little bit of an overview on Eyjar's history. Can you provide that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So historically speaking, Eyjar is a pretty interesting place for a few big reasons. One of which has to do with its early history, which we're not prepared to go into right now, but
Aren't we?
we can just say that there are there's some pretty major things going on in its early history that the player will be able to discover and connect the dots and stuff like that. Because and I'd love to say more, but this is because there are a lot of things that very few people in the world of the game actually know about. And the whole story, the truth of the early history of Eyjar is one of those things. Virtually nobody knows the whole story. And so we really want, people to be able to discover those things on their own. But yeah, there are things to be discovered about Eyjar's early history. I think that's probably the most we want to say right now. Going beyond that, though, once we get to the actual recorded history of Eyjar, the other major thing about Eyjar historically, which Ted touched on, has just to do with where it is. So for just a little bit of context on a world scale, say like the archipelago itself is kind of a backwater. Is that fair to say? Would you guys agree with that?
Yep.
So there are pockets of civilization in the archipelago, with rich history going back hundreds or sometimes
Civilization.
Yeah, sometimes, hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. But the archipelago is just not as densely populated or culturally developed as other parts of the world. So with that in mind, the island of Eyjar specifically is on the very edge of the archipelago.
The back.
So really what we're talking about is a backwater of a backwater. That's how isolated it is. Eyjar has spent a lot of its history being very, very isolated. And we have some really interesting stuff that ties into that. Namely that it spent a number of centuries as a prison in various forms, which I think maybe Victor can speak on more in a second. But basically because of all that isolation over that many years, Eyjar ends up turning into this sort of like almost cultural melting pot over time that just doesn't really exist anywhere else on the archipelago. And then the last major like historical note, the most recent one, has to do with the current state of trade in the world and for the archipelago. So Eyjar sits within a sort of border region between Splendor and She, like Ted mentioned, our two major political powers. But it also just so happens to be pretty close to some major shipping lanes originating from the homeland of the dwarfs. So even though Eyjar is super remote and it's been so unimportant in the past that it was actually forgotten about for a long time.
Oh, wow.
Relatively recent history and technological advances and new shipping and stuff like that have now made it strategically important. So people have fought over it. People will probably continue to fight over it. So yeah, between all that, I honestly think even in the full version of the game, Eyjar is going to be a standout location.
And people will be fighting over it in the player's experience.
Spoilers. Jesus. But yeah, it's going to be a standout location. People are going to be into it. And I think that's for sure part of the reason why we chose it for early access.
Wow. So it was once a prison, like almost like a penal colony?
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah, Victor, you can go ahead and go into that if you want.
Sure, yeah. Well, early on in the I guess what you would call like the BC of our Wayward calendar, going back like I think maybe like 2,000 years or so from the current timeline. Or sorry, like
1,000.
I think up to 4,000 years from the current timeline, like from where we're at, starting.
Oh wow!
I think that's about when it starts. Yeah,
yeah. That's when it kind of was like first discovered and stuff. And when orcs found it, they started sending their prisoners there to this island, and they had them working mines and stuff like that, like really getting all the resources out of Eyjar. However, then, the Lavinium Empire, which I think we've talked about a little before, but if not, that was the big empire that rose up on the mainland of Lavinium. And
so outside of our sandbox.
You're right. Yeah. And they expanded westward, eventually got to the archipelago, and they were sending their prisoners to the archipelago in general, but also to Eyjar too. So at that point, it was kind of becoming human populated as well. So you had some remnants of orcs, now new humans coming in doing that as well. And ultimately, that's kind of what leads it to the current population that we have, where it's sort of a mixture of orcs, but also more so of humans, especially because later on, once Splendor establishes a kingdom, okay, let me hop back just a little bit. So Lavinium has sent prisoners there. Eventually, the Lavinium Empire collapses. That happened about like 1,000 years prior to our game. Then orcs are able to take back that region of the archipelago, including Eyjar. So it goes back into orc hands. But then Splendor actually, they've always been in conflict with She, right? Like we've said throughout the centuries. So they managed to conquer back that section, or managed to conquer that section of territory, which includes Eyjar. And now they've thrown even more humans in there. Not this time, not as prisoners, right? They're wanting to take advantage of those shipping lanes, like John was talking about, and start getting some dwarven trade through there. And it kind of becomes a bit more populated, a bit more important. The island is growing, and good things are on the rise there. But again, She is able to conquer it once more, or rather, She and Splendor are into their border disputes, and they actually get Eyjar back as part of a treaty. So in that becomes now once again orcish rule. However, this time you've got a human government set up there, right? So the orcs are kind of like, well, what do we do with this little tiny island of human population here? And the best that they figured to do, and there was thoughts of turning it back into a prison island, but it's like, well, we've already got this major population there. It's kind of just going to disrupt everything.
Yeah, by this point, several generations have lived and died since it was last a prison island. So there's just no way.
Yeah. So what they decide to do is leave their human leader in there, which is a baron. His name was Aftain Bulgar. And they tell him, like, you can stay in charge. You can still be here and ruling if you swear allegiance to us and if you take an orc for a wife. So divorce your wife that you currently have, get an orc in there, right? And get us an orc heir.
That'd be a go for me.
Well, he said, sure, why not?
She was a pretty orc.
Certainly.
As they come.
Yes. So then we're kind of in this very interesting situation here. He divorces his wife. His son gets pretty much disowned, right? He's not going to be the heir anymore. They offer him, some land, a nice little estate to be happy, but he said, nah, I'm going to get out of here. And then we get, he has a son, an orc son, and they're the next heir in line, right? So, and I guess like I'm kind of just diving into like a major conflict here if we want to keep going.
I was going to say, I was like, yeah, keep on going, Vic.
I think I think the long story short is that the Eyjar having changed hands between Splendor and she have created a complicated situation when it comes to like succession of like what is now a barony. It was Splendor who established a barony over Eyjar. Baronies are not a thing in She. They don't even have they don't have an equivalent of that. But now now they're a part of She, but they have a human style government, and there's this question of who the quote real heir is. Is it the natural born son who decided to leave, or is it this other guy that She says is the heir? And so we have the descendants of both of these potential heirs now basically getting ready to come to blows and really settle the question.
So this is where the player begins with this kind of in the being the political structure at that point.
The conflict is incipient when the player comes in. It's on the horizon. It's not here yet, but it's coming.
Wow. That's incredible. All right, so Victor, let's dive deeper. What are some of the more important events in Eyjar's history that could become relevant as players start up early access?
Right. So obviously, some of the things I kind of already mentioned, and me and John already mentioned, the establishment of these prison colonies that really wind up giving us this population of orcs and humans, and a bit skewed more towards humans at the time that we start the game. A big thing that happens sort of in between there, which we've shared before, if you guys have followed our lore, is a really big catastrophic event that winds up breaking the archipelago apart. So in case you're not familiar, the archipelago is once a whole island, right? It was like a singular island, maybe a couple, but this big catastrophic event happens. The archipelago gets shattered. That's when Marathwir is risen up out of the ocean. And that affected Eyjar as well, certainly because orcs no longer had the resources to, care about Eyjar. They were focused on themselves back in the mainland, if you will. And
this tiny little island way over there, like we have more important things to deal with right now.
So they kind of abandon it. The prisoners are just released. Like, we got more important things to do with, fend for yourselves. And that's sort of when we start seeing the collaboration of the orcs and the humans on the island, and how John was saying, like, generations had already passed by the time people take interest in it again. And that's because of that. They were just kind of abandoned, and they built a society for themselves, and thus the generations kept going. We sort of have this unique location that grew up over time. And that was about 1,000 years from the starting point in the game. From there, if you jump about 200-300 years back is when we have Splendor taking back over. About 100 years ago, she takes back over. And that's when we have that sort of changing of powers between the orcs and the humans, and who's going to be in charge. And the thing we hinted at as the players getting onto Eyjar is really that question of who's the rightful heir, because the Baron, the human Baron, had an orc son, right, with the second wife. That orc son winds up dying without an heir, and his orc wife, her cousin, is actually put in charge of Eyjar. So he's now unrelated to the previous Baron, but he's been placed in charge by she, so he's the official Baron now at that point. Meanwhile, the human son, he left. He had a son of his own, and that son decides, hey, I should be the rightful heir there.
Oh.
So he tries to come back to Eyjar, take his place. Obviously, that doesn't go well for him. He winds up dying before he even sets foot on the island. And his son escapes. He heads eastward towards Lavinium, finds an island that he kind of rises to power in. He's like does some mercenary work and sort of builds up troops. And he decides, you know what? That's my island, right? And
he almost builds this sort of like cult of personality around him, and then basically as a preamble to essentially like claiming his birthright.
And now his name is Godsent, which some of you guys might recognize from our gameplay trailer.
Yeah.
The scenario we played in that is one possible scenario that the player may encounter, so don't take that as any kind of truth to what is going on with Godsent. But I guess you can keep that in your mind if you know what we're talking about.
Right.
So Godsent's heading back. He wants to take over that island. Meanwhile, Anatork, our current Baron, we've shared some concept art of him in the past before. We've mentioned the name. He's the son of the orc who was placed in charge. So he's technically a legitimate ruler by she standards, right? His father was put in charge.
According to the ruling government, he is in charge.
But we've got Godsent coming in, and I mean, technically, he's the rightful heir. Going back, especially like if you look at it through human eyes, his father was the Baron before.
And that's the thing. From the human perspective, it's very obvious that it might be obvious to that Godsend is the real heir, but from an orc perspective, they don't care about that. They care about who the legitimate matriarch was, who they put in charge, and like no, this is how it goes. So yeah, it's based at least a little bit on your perspective, who is the rightful heir, and that might be a decision that the player has to also make for themselves.
That's incredible. So you have a legitimately recognized government of the world, recognizing the leadership, the rightful orcish leadership of that island. But then a similarly rightful claim, much older, comes from 2 generations in the past. It sounds like it's the gods, the grandson rather of the original ruler.
It would be the great grandson of the, what you could say is the legitimate heir.
Right. So great grandson of the ruler, grandson of the legitimate heir, comes in and says, listen, and then he's not just some punk. He's a mercenary with a force to be reckoned with, and there might be other factions out there in the archipelago looking at this situation, saying, hold on a minute here. This could be the wedge that we need in order to crack open some power in that region, considering the fact that so many shipping lanes that are important. Wow, a powder keg, unbelievable. I love it. I gotta ask, what you're playing the game? I'll ask Victor. You're playing the game. What side do you take?
That's a tough one. I guess part of it probably also depends on what kind of character you want to play. Obviously, starting in early access, we're going to have orcs and humans, and that's basically what this conflict is do you want that human heir, that orcish heir? And I think that probably would inform my decision on which way I want to go there.
Right. Very interesting. Let's just do this. John and then Ted. What do you think? Where do you fall on the side of
My take on it is I'm honestly not on either of their sides. I'm on my own side as a normal average person on Eyjar.
Yes.
It really does not make much difference to me who's in charge. It really doesn't. And as long as nobody messes with me or my or my family or my property, I don't really care beyond that. So for that virtue alone, I'm technically on Anatork's side because Godsend is invading. He's coming with a mercenary army to occupy the island and lay siege and steal crops and burn villages, and I don't really care if he happens to be the rightful claimant to the title. It's just a title. What difference does it make to me? So I am against the invaders. That is what I am against.
Love it. I love it. That's such a great take too. I was kind of thinking the same thing myself a little bit on that. Like, okay, one guy might be legitimate, the other one might be just as legitimate, but who's going to create the most, chaos here? Ted, what about you? I mean, what do you think?
No, I think that John probably says it correctly. I will say the reason why the character's named Godsend is because he was my first D&D character, like in 1980. Like, I have no problem that he became a villain. But I kind of think he is a villain in this situation.
Yeah. Okay. What was his? Was he a fighter? What was he in? What?
Oh God! I mean, he like I played him, and I would get mad because people would be like, "Oh, the character has to be 10th level or whatever," and he was like 5th level, and I was like, "Yeah." Some other people gave him awesome weapons, and like I was young. So I don't think he had. I think he probably was a warrior.
Got it. OD&D or second edition?
Oh yeah, first edition.
First edition. Got it.
Oh yeah.
Ted, I want to stay with you on factions, organizations that keep Eyjar intact. Would the player be able to become a member of any of them? What kind of factions, organizations are we going to find in Eyjar?
Well, I think we promised 5. We've got many more planned. The 5 that we have very detailed, the player would definitely be part of.
What sort of benefits would be in joining some of them?
Victor?
Well, I guess it depends on what kind of character you're wanting to play. We've got 2 criminal organizations, the Baron's Men, which that's just a name that they chose. They're not actually affiliated with the Baron.
It's an ironic name, very intentionally.
Right. So, and I named them, so I should know.
Victor is very into irony. That's why I hired him.
So we've got the Baron's Men and NATO's Financial Acquisitions, so we just call the NFA for short. Those 2 are kind of rivals against each other, so you can sort of go with either one of those and kind of help them get the upper hand on the other one. We've also got the Port Authority, which is sort of it's not really a naval force. If anything, I think they've got like 1 or 2 ships that help patrol the island. Obviously, Eyjar is not a major player anymore. And those that's another one you can join, and there would be kind of trying to stop the NFA and the Baronsmen. They're more about the law and order, although they've got some questionable things going on within them if you happen to join and dig deeper.
I think every faction does.
Well, that's fair. Yeah. Then we've got our sort of fighters guild mercenary kind of group known as the Bowman Bastards. Yeah, they're sort of a bit of like I guess sort of like the roguish kind of do-gooders or whatever. They're the ones that are out there adventuring, and maybe some of their boasts are a little bigger than the reality.
Kind of like a Robin Hood and Merry Men sort of a feel. I'm getting off that
a little bit, but they don't steal. They don't commit crimes. They try to do good. They do things like they do things like taking care of like rampant monsters. If your chicken coop gets attacked by wolves, like you can give them a call, metaphorically speaking, and they'll help you take care of it. They do random jobs, couriers, escorts, not that kind of escort, actual escorting around the island. Stuff like that. Like yeah, I'm just going to trail off there.
Got it. Yeah. All right.
And then we do have one more, which is the Knights Errant. And they're a race-specific one. They're specifically orcs. So that one, if you're playing an orc character, you'd be able to join them. If you're playing a human character, not going to be a possibility. And the Knights Errant are basically about trying to change the outlook that humans have on orcs by going around doing knightly deeds, fighting in tournaments, just doing all that knightly gallant stuff that the humans really admire, and they place a big importance on in their own culture.
Okay. So John, I want to go over to you for a minute on sort of like the towns of Eyjar and how they're meant to interact with one another. What's the difference between some of the towns? How many towns are there? Are there big ones? I'm assuming they're small ones, since you said this is, it's a backwater of a backwater. So can you give us a lay of the land on civilization?
Sure. Yeah. I guess we can actually start with a slight correction, because technically speaking, there is actually only one town on Eyjar, and that would be Belfer Parva. That would be the port town that I think Victor mentioned earlier. Pretty much every other major location on the island is either a village or it's something else.
I think John's about to get pedantic.
Well, I am, but there's actually an important reason for that. But there's the town of Belfer Parva, and then there are, if I just do a rough count in my head, I think about 6 villages beyond that, plus a couple of other major important locations. But the all-encompassing term that we're using for these kinds of places is settlements rather than towns. And the reason for that actually has directly to do with our philosophy of creating a world with a realistic scale, and one that takes its cues from actual history. So to answer your question, we basically want Eyjar, and at the very least Splendor, if not the whole archipelago, but definitely Splendor, to function basically the same way that medieval Europe did. And the way that kind of breaks down is that most people live in villages. Most people live in villages of under 200 people, with the vast majority of them being, by necessity, farmers. So essentially, because of that, a village can't fully support itself. A village can't produce all of the goods that it needs in order to survive. So what happens is 2 things. One is that villages will form networks with each other, where generally speaking, you can walk from one village to the next closest village within half a day. So that way you can walk to this other village, pick up whatever you need, and then have time to walk back home before dark. But oftentimes there are just things that you can't get within half a day's walk of your home village. And that is why towns exist. And as you'd expect, towns are the major population centers. Belfer Parva is the most populated location on the island. But that's actually just a consequence of their function. It's not what defines them. Towns are commercial centers. That's why they exist. There are places for trade, there are places for shipping, stuff like that. All a place really needs in order to become a town are a market and an inn. With a market, everybody can come to town to buy and sell basically anything they need. And with an inn, people from villages that are up to a full day's walk away can travel to the market and have a place to stay for the night before they have to head home. That's the basic difference between a town and a village historically, and that's something that we intend to emulate. That's something that we've done with the layout of Eyjar.
Go ahead, Ted.
Just asking if we can start making this interesting for players.
I knew he was going to make fun of me. I knew he was going to. It's interesting to me. What I've learned is that not all players are like me, but this is interesting to me.
It's also worth noting, like how John was talking about that scale, like that actually applies to the populations, right? Like you think a video game town and or village and you might think like,
10 people. Yeah.
3 little huts, something like that. But, these are much bigger. And as far as like Belfer Parva, we're talking like over 1,000 people at least, right? The numbers will still fluctuate, especially in early access. So we don't have any like exact population numbers to share here. But like, in terms of what we see in video games, it's going to be big, even though it's technically small.
a small town on a tiny island, off of backwater.
And one additional caveat that I will add, because it sounds like I'm getting super technical with my description, is that's the very simple version. We're trying to base stuff like this on like real history and stuff like that, but we are simplifying things. I promise. We don't intend to account. For instance, we don't intend to account for like how and where every single villager is supposed to get every single thing they need to survive. It's not like we're going to go in there and say, oh, there's no candler within a day's walk. What are they going to do? No, we're not doing that. But generally speaking, things are going to look and feel the way they ought to. Neighboring villages are generally within half a day's walk, and no village is more than a day's walk away from the nearest town. That's the short version of what I was saying. So that's how we've laid out Eyjar, and that's how we like much of the rest of the archipelago to be that way as well.
It sounds great. As you were explaining all of this, I was kind of thinking to myself, what my character might be doing in some of these villages, and then making the trip to a town. And okay, that's probably where the town is, where I'm going to be able to sell stuff and going to these different villages. I'll probably be able to get some quests there, and being the fact that it was once a penal colony, there's probably tons to find and explore in the spaces between, and there must be some really cool subterranean dungeons somewhere as well. So
and outside of what you mentioned, where you're gonna like buy and sell things. Outside of towns, a lot of the economy might very well be barter based. Like, so because they're not going to town every day or even every week. Sometimes it's once a month. So if you don't have anything that they're interested in, you might very well have to take the day to walk to town to actually get and offload the things that you actually need.
Or you can get the goat.
Yeah. Or you can sell them a goat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to touch real quick on the idea of dungeons, subterranean dungeons, subterranean ruins. I don't know who wants to jump on that. Maybe Ted, maybe Victor. But I mean, I'm assuming that we're going to be able to find something like that on Eyjar. Is that true? And if so, is there a lot of places like that to discover?
Well, they can talk details, but I will definitely say Eyjar history was designed around the idea of having dungeons, and thus the whole, penal colony makes sense for dungeons. So
Yeah.
The Baron's Castle does have dungeons underneath it that don't make a whole lot of sense if you're just thinking like some small island guy, has this level of dungeon there. No, because he built it on a prison. So at some point that made sense. So,
Yeah.
We definitely come up with history because of what we think is cool, but we also say what's cool for the player.
Right. That's great to hear.
I'll let these guys go.
Yeah. I love hearing that. I'm a huge dungeon crawler. I love getting in there and discovering stuff and smashing enemies. So that's going to be a lot of fun for me in particular, but I'm sure the player base too. Victor, you got anything on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, going specifically into the whole penal colony thing and the Baron's Castle, one of the major dungeons that exists actually still serves as a prison for Eyjar, and that's at the Baron's Castle in what used to be this really big mine that they had. So it like goes down really far. It's called the Pit. Just simple name for it. But it used to be a big mine. It ran dry, then they started, and the prisoners used to work it, right? So ran dry, obviously not as many prisoners anymore. It's going to be something where like the upper levels still service as a prison for, the few criminals that they catch on Eyjar. They get shipped there, they get locked up for however long. But the really bad ones, they get thrown down into the bottom. And, that's not a place that's still active anymore. So you're going to find some interesting things down there. We'll put it that way.
Oh, it's a mine as well, right?
Right.
It was, yes. And yeah, it's literally a, real medieval justice. Like, if you're found guilty, throw them into the pit now. It's right out there.
Love it. Oh, I cannot wait to explore that. That's going to be so cool.
The Pit is not just it's not just a fun name. It really is a pit. It's like basically being thrown into the pit is or should be a death sentence. It's that deep. It goes down that far. The shaft.
Wow. Are
there ways for the player to survive that? Probably. Are there other ways down there? Yes. But when people get thrown into the pit, yeah, that's it for them. They are not coming back.
And there certainly will be reasons why the player will be tasked with going down into the pit and finding a way down there and finding a way back out.
We're not going to invent this just for the sake of that.
Love it.
I mean, I would, but
Ted, what were you going to say before?
Oh, it was actually a random thought. Oubliette is the kind of medieval term for like a pit in the middle of a dungeon that you just drop someone down and that was the end of them. And I'm like, we have 200 and how many islands do we have off of Archipelago? Do you know offhand, Victor?
It's like 213, something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I named them all, and now I'm thinking I need to name one Oubliette. It's like really far off. I'm thinking, the other coast, the opposite coast of Eyjar.
The Eyjar of the West Coast.
Yeah, because I think there were more islands off there. So
come to Oubliette, the Eyjar of the West Coast.
Yeah.
We've got palm trees. We don't have palm trees. We don't have palm. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for weighing in on the lore. I want to move into our quote unquote gameplay section. So each episode, myself, our guests will be sharing, a couple of fun stories about what we did that month in the Wayward Realms. But the game's not here yet. So what are we going to talk about? So every month I have a question that I want to ask our developers on kind of like what they did in the game. What did they develop? Sort of a thing until early access comes out. So Ted, Victor, then John, if you could, please think of something you created specifically for Eyjar. What is it, and why did you want it for Eyjar?
I mean, my thing is very simple. It has nothing in the game, but I'm working the prequel novel, and I have several scenes that I force into Eyjar. This needs to happen in Eyjar. It needs to be a prequel to the player's actual experience. So,
why did you want that for either Eyjar or for the reader?
Well, because it's supposed to be a prequel to what you're playing. So if you don't immediately recognize it or can't immediately go over and say, hey, there's that rock that was the novel, or, whatever, then, what's the point of doing a prequel?
Yeah. Okay. So some good old fashioned continuity for players.
That's right.
I love it. That's so important, when establishing a world. That continuity is so important. Okay, Victor. Something you made for Eyjar. Why did you want that thing for that island?
It's a really tough question. I think I did the lore for a lot of the lore for Belfer Parva and the surrounding area. And I think it's just kind of it's.
And you sold some of my NPCs.
Yeah, we took one of Ted's NPCs from another town and we slapped him in as the mayor of Eyjar.
It's fine.
Or not of Eyjar, as a Belfer Parva. Sorry. Yeah, I think Belfer Parva would be really neat again because it's the big city, quote unquote big city of the island. It's where players are going to be going to get the best supplies, the most varied supplies, including ships. It's the only place that has a shipwright on the island. It's got an old harbor, some that comes from let's just say human ruins that are older than what the current history knows of.
Ooh.
Of Eyjar.
Oh boy.
And a statue in the middle of this harbor of a goddess. No one knows who that goddess is anymore. They just call her the Queen of Tides. So there's a little bit of mystery as to like what was going on in the far, far past of Eyjar that people can kind of start diving in there. And that's sort of the first big clue of like, hey, like, there was something going on here in the past before it was, the Eyjar that we know.
Now this is pre 4,000 years ago. Oh,
no comment.
Wow. Okay, interesting. That's good.
Oh man,
I think players are going to have to figure that one out.
It was between 4,000 and 65 million years ago.
That really points it. Thanks.
No, that means it was a long time ago, not necessarily.
Right. Incredible. Okay, John, on to you. Something you made for Eyjar. Why'd you want it for Eyjar?
Well, I mean, and I thought a lot about this, and to be totally honest, in terms of the things that we're ready to talk about right now,
yeah,
I haven't really created all that much for Eyjar specifically. My contributions have been more in the area of basically taking the work that has been done by the writing team, by Victor, by Ted, and others, and just sort of putting it all together and making sense of it, like I talked about earlier. And if I find right away that everything fits and everything makes sense, then there's not much for me to do beyond organizing it.
Okay.
What's often the case though is that things will sometimes mostly fit together.
You're being so nice right now.
I'm being 100% honest. Usually things mostly fit together and mostly make sense. But a really good example of that is actually the settlements, the town and the villages of Eyjar. So the writing team did a ton of work and got every location to the point where everybody liked it, everything made sense, or at least we thought it did, and so we decided that everything was good to go. But then quite some time later, actually, only after actually putting everything together and documenting it and closely examining it as a whole, I realized that Eyjar didn't have any mills. There was not a single place to mill grain on the entire island. And for a society that's primarily based around farming,
we have rivers.
But we're not going to talk about that. But even if there were rivers, there were no established mills anywhere. So I guess that's my answer, is that now there is a mill at Much Chuffnell. The Much Chuffnell Mill is my contribution to Eyjar.
Yay, my town.
So and the reason and the reason I wanted it there is because it makes sense, and because it makes living there make more sense.
Yeah.
You need to be able, you need to take your grain somewhere in order to have it milled. That's something that you have to do. So that's why I wanted it there, and I think that's probably my biggest contribution to Eyjar.
The mill
to this date is basically a single building.
You're awesome.
Thank you. Love you too.
I guess looking at the question, it's really a question about passion, creating something for a specific reason for others to explore. And so I guess it really breaks down to, what has made you passionate about creating for this particular piece of early access we're all going to be diving into. For me in particular, I'm extremely passionate about diving into some of those really old subterranean dungeons, and that's going to be the first thing I'm looking forward to as soon as you're
gonna have fun.
I start out. Oh, I can't wait! It's just I'm so excited for that experience alone. Okay. I know we've gone for just over an hour, and I want to thank everyone for hanging out and really answering some awesome questions, and hopefully you, dear listener, are enjoying it as well. But hey, our community's got some questions too. I picked out 2 from Discord, and the first one is from Fish of Immortal, and says about Daggerfall likeness. So the Immortal Fish asks this. So after playing a good amount of Daggerfall for the first time, I noticed how the world is massive, but it doesn't really have much stuff in it to do. Majority of quests would lead you to a dungeon, and the rest would lead you to a specific house, but nothing in the overworld. In the case of the Wayward Realms, will it be a dungeon crawler first, like Daggerfall, or will it be possible to just completely ignore dungeons in favor of just doing things in the open world? Alternatively, what would be the percentage goal of dungeon versus non-dungeon content?
Our percentage goal is concise. So
right, 33.65%.
That's right. You remember.
It's a bit of a tough one. Like as far as any percentage, I guess really Wayward Realms is sort of answering that Daggerfall issue, right? Like there was dungeons to go to, tons of those, and then nothing really else to do. And really, one of the major things that Ted and Julian wanted to do with Wayward Realms was expand that and really bring that overworld to life. We've almost had like a bit of a debate as to whether it is a dungeon crawler or or really something more beyond that. And I mean, ultimately, players will be going to dungeons, right? That's just part of the DNA of that Daggerfall spiritual successor. But we do want to have, obviously, we're building, making tons and tons of towns and villages and cities. And we want players to be able to have quests and things to do there. And then the wilderness itself, we're building really beautiful, vast, open wilderness. And if all you can do is just walk through it, then that'd be way too boring. So it really is a point that we're trying to
sometimes a bear.
Yeah, it really is a point that we're trying to make, that there will be things to do out there in the world. The quests will take you to places beyond just dungeons, beyond just the cities. But, hard to put any real percentage on it, especially when you think about the VGM and how it can dynamically assign different locations for your quest goals, right? So, maybe it winds up leaning, like you as a player are enjoying more of the overworld stuff, and the VGM kind of starts leaning more into that. Or maybe you all about the dungeon crawling and the VGM leans more into that.
Oh yeah, I could totally see videos where they're going like, playing Wayward without visiting a dungeon. Like totally more than possible.
Well, I mean, and especially considering the scale that we're going for, in particular when we really start delving into like the big towns, the ones that you can really call cities, like our capital city and stuff like that. Like
Coventry.
You could almost set, but not even almost, you could set an entire, with what we have planned for Coventry, you could set an entire game there.
Oh yeah,
literally. And so that's from my perspective, that's the sort of thing that I'm looking forward to. But I think it is fair to say that there is there is a focus on dungeons, but we're looking at everything else too.
Interesting. This does remind me of a question I had about level and early access. Is there a level range for Eyjar, or is the game built somewhat differently?
Like as far as a player level kind of thing?
Yeah, character level.
Well, I guess the important thing there is we don't have like an actual character level, right? It's only the skill levels, and as you do use them more, you increase those levels individually, and then ultimately, as those increase, your attributes increase as a result of that, the related ones. So when we look at it, we don't really try to put a level of challenge to any specific region, but rather kind of have a mix. And the sort of philosophy has always been, the further away you get from civilization, the more dangerous the world should get. And so thus, like as a player, you're going to need to have higher skills, better equipment, things like that in order to really start exploring those further regions.
Got it. That's very interesting. So it's not like Eyjar is planned to be between, levels, 1 and 10 or 1 and 15, but rather there's a mixture of difficulty throughout all of Eyjar, and, you might get your speech skill, so to speak, to a certain level where you're all, you're persuading people left and right, but then you make your way into one of these subterranean dungeons or into the wilderness, and your one-handed skills got quite a bit to go in order to get through.
I will say this about Eyjar, because again, that's the topic of this conversation. Is it is designed to be really fun for beginning players. At some point, we'll send you off to the mainland and have more fun, but it is supposed to be a place you keep coming back to. So there are things, rare herbs that are only there, so going back to the your starting island. There's major plot points that happen in this world, but you won't discover on early access. You'll discover later on. So it's not supposed to be a play it once and forget it, and once you're super cool and killing dragons at a glance, then You never need to worry about it. It's designed to be, it's a tiny little island that is a major part of the plot.
Interesting.
That was that was a metaphor, by the way. You can't kill dragons with a glance. That's not a thing. Ted was being metaphorical. Yes. Unconfirmed.
We don't want to hear all those comments or complaints about that. But I did want to just add that, like,
which, the glance or the dragon?
I guess we don't have a glance ability at this point, but maybe we'll add one in. Glance.
Was unaware of that.
Until the DLC comes out, named Dragon Glance.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, writing that one down right now. But I did just want to touch on, like, I hinted at those secrets of something maybe much older that lies there on Eyjar, and so it's sort of going to be that little thread that might pull you back in at a little later down the line when you're a bit stronger and able to handle a bigger challenge.
All right.
And I also think almost no matter what character you are and how advanced you are, I think there are going to be places and things and creatures and monsters and stuff like that on Eyjar that if you're not careful, they're still going to be a threat to you. So I think even if you've played 100, 200 hours on the mainland and you go back to Eyjar, it's not like you can just stroll through any part of the woods and shrug off everything. You're still going to have to watch out.
Wow. Okay. Very good to know. Okay. This next question comes from Addison, who asks, fan ideas greenlit for early access, initial release, or future updates. Addison says, I really appreciate the way you involve fans and backers in shaping both the game and the podcast. It's great to see that community ideas are considered as part of development. With that in mind, I was wondering, have any fans submitted suggestions been officially greenlit, whether for early access, the initial release, or planned future updates? Looking forward to hearing how or if community feedback has tangibly played a role in bringing Wayward Realms to life thus far. Thanks.
Yeah, there have been so many different things that, were either like fan suggestion or a question that we asked that fans gave feedback to, or the name of something.
Like the sword, the name of the queen.
Yeah, it's like specifically those for sure. Like we've put out polls before with some names for people to choose, and the community votes, and that becomes the name of something. I think the neatest one was the name of the king, because we had Basilius come out as the winner, and then Davros come in second, and Davros winds up being the name of the previous king that Basilius deposed. So I think that's just really fun and a great way to include the community there. Marathweir was also brought about by the community when very early on I had put that question out there of like, what environments do you guys like to explore? And the first was forest, which we definitely had covered, but the second was desert. And we didn't have any desert because it's more of a Western Europe kind of a locale, right? So we got to thinking, and it's like, well, how can we put in a desert for fans? And that's how the idea of Marathweir being raised from the ocean floors, came into being. And really is one of the most interesting places that we have on the Archipelago, and that's entirely because of fans. Wow. We've also had like our designers go into the Discord and just ask the community for like some ideas on abilities that we reviewed and we've taken into consideration. As far as like those ideas, nothing's ever really one-to-one because, well, the community just doesn't know what our systems are yet, right? We haven't shared that much information. So it's never going to translate one-to-one, but we definitely take inspiration and see what fits and what we can tweak and that kind of stuff. So it's really hard to say like how much impact the community has had because it's sort of spread out all over, from the lore to game mechanics to, just about everything you can think of. And it's really fantastic. I absolutely love it. We like to think, or we like to say that the game is as much the community's as it is ours.
Totally.
Well, and I think I can also speak to like, not only for myself or for the people on this call or for, the team, I can speak. I think I can speak for literally all writers and say that we're not shy about stealing. We don't make it. We don't make it 1-to-1 like Victor said. We adapt it. We twist it. We make it wayward. But like we steal. We steal so much. We steal from history. We steal from mythology. We steal from all over the place. And if the community's got a great idea and it works for our world, or if we can make it fit for our world, I have no qualms whatsoever about using it.
Yeah, but you know what though? That's just the nature of gaming. That is from like a developmental standpoint. From what I've noticed, that's just the nature of gaming. It's video games are a reflection of human history's best stories, best myths, and lowest and highest points of history. So, that makes a lot of sense, for, quote unquote, stealing a lot. It seems like, that's what developers of video games do and should do. We should be.
The Morrowind story, right?
No, well, it's a pretty general question. I know some bits about the person who wrote a lot of the lore there, but I'm not sure exactly what you're aiming at.
It was based, like the name was based on a pretty well-known sword and sorcery fantasy court called Morrowind.
Oh yeah, I did hear this.
And we were all like, "Oh, that sounds good."
Right.
Didn't raise the flag.
Didn't.
And we put it in the map as being like Morrowind is a place. And
yeah, and when we talk about stealing and using ideas, it's mostly a joke. It's mostly hyperbole. Usually.
I like how you cut me off.
But no, we make it our own. We make it our own. That's the rule. Is like, we're never going to take someone else's idea and just put it in there. We're gonna twist it. We're gonna make it wayward. We're gonna make it our own. But like I said earlier, almost no matter what the source is, if it's a good idea and we like it, like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, but like, don't steal the name, for example.
Yeah, change at least 2 letters.
All I'm asking. Yeah.
Can't wait for players to explore our elven kingdom of Hyrule or
I love it. I maybe I'll ask later, Ted. I'll ask later. Not now.
Oh no, I have more stories, but probably not for the podcast.
Right. I have some questions. Well, dear listener, thank you so much for being here, and thank you to Ted, to Victor, to John, to lending us your not only your time but your insights as well, and all this wonderful information about early access. I am even more supercharged than I have been to get my fingers into it. But the story is not done here, folks. So much development is in front of us, and we need your help. So you might ask, well, shucks, how can I help? Well, it's actually pretty simple. You can wishlist the Wayward Realms on Steam. That's a massive help. You can share, hit the notification bell on YouTube at OnceLost Games for this podcast. Leave a comment below. We read them all. We love your comments. Thank you for them.
Leave a comment on this web zone. Leave a comment on this web zone if you want to talk more about books. I want to talk about books.
John.
Hey, you know what? You could give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That helps as well. You can hang out with us on Discord, found at waywardrealms.com, and follow us on all social at OnceLost Games. We'll see you in our travels, and until then, everyone, happy exploring.